Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Jason.
Hello, everyone.
And Stoney.
Hello.
How's it going, guys?
Well, things are good. I mean, I think we're going to start drying out. We've had a lot of rain lately over here, and which I'm not necessarily complaining because I know my friend with the nursery.
Oh yeah,
he uses rainwater for the nursery, and I know he probably keeps
he's probably on capacity.
Probably now. I mean, I think he keeps on average around 15,000 gallons of rainwater.
Cool. Oh wow!
So it he's got to get rain, and it needs to rain like hard. And for whatever reason around this area, the rain comes and it looks like it either parts north or parts south.
Yeah.
So I was kind of glad that we got the kind of a bit of I think I got about 3-4 inches, which is good. So for my friend Mark, I know he's happy as a lark probably right now, and it makes it easier not having to water every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting how the trend is like around the morning time. It's like mostly clear,
yeah,
or like a little bit cloudy and like not too bad, but sunshine mostly. And then like by the time the afternoon hits, it's like pitch black, dark.
Well,
and it's like and there's just like it's like monsoon.
Those summer thunderstorms, that convection in the atmosphere. The atmosphere heats up, it gets unstable, and we have our typical summer thunder boomers, so to speak. But
it's been kind of nice.
Yeah, it cools things down.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, yeah. So, but they said I think this week is going to be trending drier.
Okay.
So I think it's pretty outside right now.
Yeah.
So should be good. So we should be good.
Hopefully it'll dry up. I think Miranda said it's going to be like 10 days before rain's supposed to start again. So.
Yeah, well, that ain't good either.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, I'm hoping we don't have what we had last year.
Oh my gosh, we had like a drought last year.
Yeah, it was almost 3 months of no rain, and it was hot.
Yes,
and it was triple-digit heat every day. I mean, talking about air temps, not heat indexes.
Yeah.
And that just dries everything up. So let's hope we don't have that problem. But that wouldn't surprise me the way the weather has been going. So.
Right.
But no, I was thinking about what could we talk about, and of course, what is going on in the news right now. But the decision that was handed down by the New York jury with former President Trump and all the hoopla surrounding that, and you had some people out there jumping for joy, and then you have other people. They're gnashing of teeth and everything else. And I thought it would be a good topic to talk about because you're not going to get away from it. He is the front runner for the Republican nomination. He will be on the ballot. So you're going to either have a choice of Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And, maybe RFK will be on some of the ballots in some states if he had enough signatures. I personally think that RFK is probably sympathetic to Trump. I really do. Just listening to him. I know they probably have some differences, but I think on the core principles of what his uncle believed in, I would venture to say that much of the modern Republican Party is what the Democratic Party was 50, 60 years ago. And what we have now is, unfortunately, a time where the Justice Department, I feel like in many ways, has been weaponized.
Oh, it's absolutely been weaponized.
Against an opponent.
And all you have to do is think about it. The last two judges, the Egeron guy and this Marchand guy is not even in the rotation to hear cases.
No, he was picked.
He was picked, but he's also been picked a number of times to hear every Trump and conservative case. Okay, you know what that tells me? CIA.
Yeah, well, I mean...
Okay, that tells me 100% that's the CIA trying to work inside our own country to push an agenda.
Well, there's no doubt there's an agenda being pushed. I mean, I think it's very clear, and I actually thought this was a very good point. I heard this on another news site, or I don't even remember where I put, but this statement of this conviction to me sends a message to basically the Trump voter that basically says that your guy, he's unacceptable to be president, regardless of whether you want him to be president or not. In our wisdom and in our world, he can't be president because he doesn't want to go along. He doesn't want to play nice. And there's a lot of people that basically that just angers them even more. Mm-hmm. I fear what this has done, because the only thing you have as a citizen of this country, the way I can express my political will on my government and what I want it to represent and want it to look like, is my ability to vote for who I want to be able to vote for. And by trying to do what they're doing, whether he's guilty or not, or I should say, not necessarily whether he's guilty, because he has been basically said he is guilty. Mm-hmm. It's the nature of the crimes in which they kind of had to really ramp up, because my understanding, he was convicted on basically falsifying business records, and supposedly the whole Stormy Daniels thing and the hush money that was paid, that their argument was, and I think the prosecution's case on this was that was a campaign expense and that should have been declared and listed. And because it wasn't, that's where they're saying the falsification occurred.
But also, you have to have a unanimous vote. This judge, Marchand, came in and said, y'all all don't have to agree. But if you agree that he's guilty on some of these charges, and some of these charges, and some of these charges, we'll convict him.
Well,
okay, that's unconstitutional, number one. But he also puts a gag order on Trump so that he can't talk about the judge's corrupt family. His daughter was paid $4 million by Adam Schiff and gets donations from social media by showing Trump behind bars. And guess who his wife works with? Letitia James. Now, if that's not a conflict of interest, please tell me what the definition of conflict of interest is.
That's what I'm saying.
He should have recused himself.
I'm saying this is why people feel the way they do, and this is why the anger, I think, I think this is going to backfire.
Oh, absolutely, it's going to backfire.
I truly think this is going to backfire, because people see through what this is. And this just goes back to kind of a question, or just a commentary I brought up on another, I believe it was another episode, that what is the fear of him? I've never understood the anger, and I know when we had Jim Inkster on and we kind of touched on this a little bit. What is it about Donald Trump that absolutely they have to absolutely just stop this guy from being president? What is he going to show? What is he going to do that they're so terrified of.
Well, now they're going to be even more terrified because some of the things he wouldn't do when he was president is because you leave former presidents alone. You leave former cabinet members alone. But now that they've attacked him, heaven fucking help them people if he gets elected again.
Right.
Because he's going to put them all in jail.
He's going to be.
That goes all the way back to Clinton, Obama.
That's what I'm
Bush
saying.
II, all of this.
There was allegations made. I mean, when Obama was elected about what Dick Cheney and Bush Jr. About the supposed the falsehoods that were sold to the American people about going into Iraq and all that Afghanistan and the whole mess that we drug our country into. And, there was nobody wanted to go after these guys. And I think that's
it was common courtesy.
Right.
I mean, it was professionalism.
It was just, okay, you're out of office. That's it. Done deal. Now we move on. There's something different about Trump. And for them to go to the levels they're going to right now, to put this guy away, which will never happen. I should say, I'm not going to say it'll never happen. I believe sentencing is on July 11th. Which is, I think, 5 days before the Republican National Committee,
and that's on purpose. Think about that. That's on purpose.
And I'm telling you, if he orders him any jail time, I worry about what that means for the country, because for almost 76 million people that voted for Trump last time, I think you're going to have more people vote, because I think people have seen the shenanigans of this current administration and the utter incompetence and just the outright allowing millions of people across the border, not doing anything about it, an economy that's in the tank. I mean, some people argue, well, no, the economy is doing better. Of course.
How's it doing better?
Yeah,
please give me one example of how the economy is doing better.
It costs now more money to borrow money.
You spend $1,000 a year minimum more just in gas.
Right, you do.
Plus, food is
gas,
almost to a $300.
Food.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
$300 to $400 a month more in food.
And that's the sad part about it. Is we have gotten to a point now that even people that may be on the other side, they can't even acknowledge, yes, it's bad, because then I'll be perceived I'm with the other team.
Right.
And that's where we're at now, that we can't even I can just objectively look at a situation and say, yeah, this situation is in the tubes.
It's horse blinders.
And
it's horse blinders.
It's
you
because
can beat
we've
a
become
horse
so tribal that I can't say anything positive about the other side.
or get beat up. It's horse blinders. When they used to have the horses on the carriages, they would put these blinders on them, and you could force that horse to go anywhere you wanted just because they couldn't see everything else. And you could beat them, and they're still going to pull the wagon.
Yeah,
and that's what's happening today in America. This is just ridiculous. House Democrat Congressman and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries has sent over $1.5 million in payments to the personal home of Judge Merkin's daughter, Lauren Merkin. Why is that not on every front page?
Well, at one time in our country, it would have been. But the media, what's happening is the reason they are getting away with this is because they have a complicit national media that is covering for the Democratic Party.
It's a stacked
and it's
deck.
Obvious what it is.
It's a stacked deck. Let me give you something. The governor of Michigan used to work for George Soros. Gavin Newsom is Nancy Pelosi's nephew. Adam Schiff's sister is married to George Soros' son. Hillary's daughter, Chelsea, is married to George Soros's nephew. Executive ABC Ian Cameron is married to Susan Rice, Obama's foreign national security advisor. CBS President David Rhodes is the brother of Ben Rhodes, Obama's national deputy security for strategic communications. ABC News correspondent Clara Shipman is married to Jay Carney, former Obama White House press secretary. Matthew Jeff, the ABC guy, is married to Katie Hogan, Obama's deputy press secretary. Ben Sherwood of ABC President is the brother of Elizabeth Sherwood, Obama's former special advisor. CNN President Virginia Mosley is married to Tom Nides, former Hillary Clinton's deputy secretary. How else you want to call it a stacked deck? That is a stacked deck, and the people, this is why people hate Trump. And I don't agree with everything he did and said. At times you just felt like he was just, kind of an immature, tweeting some ugly stuff. But he made one comment that was true, and that comment was, they don't want me. They want you, and I'm the only thing standing in between.
Yeah, I mean, that's why people voted for Trump. I mean, people talk about, well, you can't hate the Trump voter, versus, disliking Trump himself. And look, Trump has his issues. I mean, every candidate does. He's a typical New York businessman that grew up in that world of dog eat dog world and doing what you got to do, and he's not a politician at heart. No. And he, unfortunately, he does.
Excuse me. What was her name? Oh shit! Here we go with my memory again. Always the afternoon TV show. During the crap. What was her name? I don't know. Famous. They got a religion after her.
Oprah?
Oprah. Yes. Oprah said back in the late 80s that this man needs to run for president. That come from Oprah Winfrey at one time.
That's unfortunately, I think there've been the entertainment, the prominent people in entertainment. Mm-hmm. I think they're so compromised and they're so captured. I believe some of them are willingly, are doing things to achieve a certain end.
I think at a certain point you say what you have to say to keep yourself in the limelight. That's what all celebrities do. You say what you want to say until all of a sudden it's no longer okay to say that, and you're like, I'm sorry, that was then, this is now, and I'm going to be sympathetic towards XYZ. And right now, in that sphere, it is very popular to hate Trump and to be against that whole thing. Well, and to keep relevant, you have to be against that.
Let's look at this from a kind of a macro view. And the way I've always tried to explain this to people, I believe it comes back to worldviews. I do believe the Trump voter, for the most part, and of course, when you're making these statements, there's nothing completely absolute because there's always exceptions,
right? Absolutely,
in everything. But let's be honest. The Trump voter represents America, what America used to be. Mm-hmm. The value systems, how we went about doing things, our place in the world. The people who voted for Obama's and Hillary and look at and want a world that is, I hate to say it, more socialistic in its how government should interact with people, more open borders where borders are porous, more women rights, if you want to call it that, more identity politics, more victim, trying to make up for past injustices. And so you have these two competing worldviews that are at each other's throats. You know, Hillary Clinton, who did she blame for losing the presidential election? She blamed women because women abandoned her in droves. She said that because they listened to their husbands.
Because that's part of the problem. We're voting for someone because of their race, their gender, instead of being a quality candidate.
That's what I'm saying. So this goes back. We're a generational podcast, and we probably look at these things a little different. Mm-hmm. You know, the world I grew up in was the world of Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. Those were the defining moments of time. You know, I was young when Carter got elected, and even before that would have been Gerald Ford. I don't remember that.
Right,
I do,
but you do because that's your age category. For me, it was Carter, Reagan, and the worldview that Reagan brought. Now, Reagan changed. You know, Reagan was a hawk when he first got elected, and you know, there's a lot of talk about, and you know, it came with nuclear weapons and the Pershing II missiles and all that was going on. I think in 1986, the world had over 70,000 nuclear weapons. Now, it's nowhere near that now. But after Reagan saw that movie The Day After, he changed because of what we were basically banging on the door to do. Nobody eventually kind of stepped back from that insanity and saying that. But as far as what was the kind of social values that were in place during that era, okay? And that is where I think the arguments ultimately lie. The women groups will say, well, women needed more rights. Women should not have been relegated to homes, unable to open bank accounts. You know, they were, in essence, they couldn't do anything unless their husband said so, okay? And there's some pros and cons to that worldview at the time of why the world operated the way it did versus what's happened is you've had a radicalization, which is typically what happens is when we try to fix things that we perceive to be an injustice, it often swings so far the other way, right?
It's a big pendulum. Yep.
And unfortunately, it swings that far, and then there's constituent bases that form, and they want to maintain that power.
But see, part of that problem is that this is only happening in America. And have you traveled? Because I have. I've sat in other countries and watched what people want and what they do on a regular basis. Part of what you're talking about is the 1% throwing shade and causing hatred in America to destroy America. And that's happened basically from roughly about the time you're talking about, Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. Because before that, we still believed in the Constitution. Before that, we still had pride. And now we don't have that. Now you're a Christian nationalist. Now you're this. Now you're that. Now you hate. Because this 1% of the money who really runs this country, because it's all the defense budgets, it's all this money that people are spending, it's all about how much money I can make. When you were a politician back in the 20s and 30s, you weren't getting rich. You did it because you wanted to. But now you got people like Nancy Pelosi and other people that come out that make $180,000 a year and have been doing it since the Reagan times. And now they're worth $200, $300, $400, and $500 million. There's a problem there. Well, because if you follow the Constitution, and this is the problem, we've gotten away from the Constitution. If you stuck to the Constitution, we would have no federal meddling in our schools, no Federal Reserve, no U.S. membership in the UN, no gun control, no foreign aid. We would have no welfare for big corporations or for the poor, no American troops in 100 foreign countries, no NAFTA, no GATT, no fast track, no arrogant federal judges usurping states' rights, no attacks on private property, no income tax, and we would get rid of most of the agencies and most of the budget, and the government would be small, frugal, and limited. People forget the Constitution is not made to control the American citizen. It's made to control the government.
Yeah,
and until we get back to that.
But the question is, though, I would venture to say the seeds of that were planted when we started shipping our manufacturing overseas.
Absolutely.
And that was that started under Reagan, all in the hopes of increasing corporate profits, because what they're going to do is I'm going to cut back on the expense of labor.
But think of it, like you said, the arms dealing.
The military-industrial complex, and I've talked about that, and I think that's another big reason why they hate Trump, because Trump didn't get into any wars.
Yep.
And nobody's making any money at sitting home and everybody's singing Kumbaya.
That's right.
I mean, it's just not. The reality is our world is there's a lot of money to be made when people are killing one another, because we got to create more bullets. We got to buy more. We got to create bombs and guns and tanks and planes and everything else. I thought that movie Lord of War with Nicolas Cage,
based on a true story.
It was based off Victor Bout.
Yep.
Who just got recently released for Brittany Griner in a trade, which that's unbelievable that they equated a basketball person to basically the world's largest private arms dealer that spread more misery and destruction around the globe. But that's less important than getting a basketball player who had drugs on her in Russia, which is so stupid. I mean, it just shows you where we're at, the mentality of where we're at now. But that's what I'm saying. I don't want to, as I said, I don't want to make it all just about women's rights. I'm just using that as somewhat of an example of kind of what I would call the traditional view of kind of those tradition. We hear about what are traditional values. What do we mean by that? I would venture to say that means that basically goes back to when mama was at home, daddy went to work, and basically you had that kind of paradigm that basically that's how society operated.
And that's how the generations have been.
And
in my generation,
it's kind of always been that way. Now,
one person could afford to raise the family, put the kids in college if they wanted to go, have the house, have the car, and now one person can't do that.
Why did suburban women dislike Trump a lot?
Because they listened to the media saying he did these things, said these things.
Exactly. It was that famous. He's
a womanizer.
He's a womanizer. You got to grab him by the P word and all that.
Okay, and so he just got convicted for hush money to a woman. Right. But yet we didn't touch Bill Clinton, who did it for 3 women and spent way more money. At the bottom line, if you look at the dollar amount that Trump spent on his hush money and the dollar amount that Bill Clinton spent on his hush money, at least Donald Trump gets the better deal out of it. But Clinton did it for 3 women. Why didn't we go after him? Because he's not running against the Democrat.
Because he's not villainized. That's the problem right now.
Saying
you can.
But we villainized him because he's running against Hillary Clinton. He's running against the Democrats.
Maybe, but I think it's also the fact that I think there's a lot of other things at play that I think are causing the people to hate him as much. As I understand where you're coming from like the background scene.
People hated him with 78 million votes. And he was out there, and then Biden has 83 million votes from his basement, which was more votes than Obama, who was a popular president.
I don't think that's what he is talking about.
I'm answering the question that you're saying is like, why do people get so up in arms about why they get frustrated at Trump specifically? And I think it's because of the fact that he has been. There's a word online used now called rage bait. where it's something that is intentionally wrong in a video or said incorrectly or is whatever, to just like to drum up aggravation with people and to just draw that out of people. And I think from the very beginning, that's what the media has done with Trump.
Absolutely.
Is just find those things to get everyone so angry at this person. And it keeps swelling and swelling and swelling to where even you can just mention his name and it will make someone go so insane.
Go crazy.
And it's that kind of stuff. I don't think it's anything he specifically has done, but it's just the focus and all the other things, all of the things that were said about him that has focused him into this bad person.
No, that's a good point.
And the opposite can be said about Biden.
That's a great point. I talk, to a lot of Trump people. I've talked to some people that hate Trump. But I tell people all the time. I mean, we at the end of the day, all we can do is look at what we have in front of us and go, I agree with 80% of what he represents and what his policies will be, kind of how he will go about running things. There's 20% that I may not like.
Sure.
Okay? The fact of the matter is that's just the reality of where we're at with it. I have to vote for someone. It may not, I'm not 100%, behind this person, but he represents at least a majority of how I feel.
But you see, you used the right word. He represents something. And I keep coming into my head and I see that video where Joe Biden is talking to this man and he gets this hatred-filled face and he screams at him, says, "I don't work for you." Actually, technically, you do work for me.
Right.
You are a representative government. And that's what I keep coming back with Joe Biden. He doesn't represent anything except his crime family, the Biden crime family.
Well, I mean, look, I think they're all, but the fact of the matter is there's still people that he's in there, obviously, because there are people that like him in a way of keeping things the way they are. They don't want nothing to change. All the established channels of how money flows, what programs get funded, all those kind of things matter. The Trump voter generally represents someone, and why they elected him in the first place. He is the big middle finger to the establishment.
Yes, to the establishment.
He is, because they see that in him that basically says, I ain't a part of this. I think y'all are all corrupt. I think y'all have screwed this country up beyond recognition. And nobody wants to hear that.
Right.
Nobody wants to hear they've screwed everything up. So they sit there and they can't stomach this guy because they don't want to look at themselves in the mirror. I mean, they just don't. And so we're in this predicament here where I'm voting for Trump because, damn it, I don't like what I see. Right. That's really what it comes to. I may not necessarily like the guy, but you know what? He does represent a lot of stuff that I agree that he says. And the other guy ain't saying it. So I'm going to vote for Trump. That's what it is. I mean, Trump is a billionaire. He's not have anything the way the welder that works on in the construction site.
And technically the only president to lose money while he was president.
Right. And look, I tell people all the time, I say, look, Trump ain't a savior.
Right.
He's a flawed human being like anybody else. The very fact that he had to go pay off a porn star,
who's been proven by her own words that it didn't happen.
Well, whether it happened or not, I do believe some things happened. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if the guy was is a church-going Christian man who actually believed in what where a Christian is supposed to act, the fact of the matter is he didn't. He compromised himself, unfortunately. And when you run for public office at those highest levels, every little thing is going to get exposed. It just will.
It's going to come out.
It just will. And so you have what we have. We have a flawed human being who a lot of people are hanging their hopes on that somehow is going to fix the country. And the fact of the matter is whether the country can be fixed, because I think we as a country, we have to look at ourselves. Mm-hmm. We do. And we have to understand what's happened. What has changed with us? Why can't we find common ground anymore? Is there such a thing as common ground anymore? Yeah. Or are we so fundamentally different in how we want the country to operate that we're incapable of even having the discussion? Mm-hmm. Because the fact of the matter is, I have fundamental disagreements with people who want to turn this country into a socialist type country. While I don't necessarily, I think capitalism has its faults, I still think it's the best mechanism we have for wealth in this country to get people out of poverty and to basically turning it into something completely different. I think you're going to go down. You're going down the wrong path there. So there's some things fundamentally I'm going to just disagree with. We're never going to agree on that. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to keep rambling on about that stuff, but I mean, because the fact of the matter is, we're talking about the Trump conviction, and what does that mean for the country?
Right.
That's what we're here talking about.
But we're talking about that, but we're also talking about why we got to that point. Why we got to the point of a former president being attacked this way. Because that's what it is. He is being attacked.
Of course he's being attacked. Because they took something that's very minor, mm-hmm. that is at best a misdemeanor.
At best.
And believe me, would not have been brought up with any other person.
It wasn't brought up with Bill Clinton, who did that same misdemeanor three times and spent way more money.
I'm a firm believer that this is going to get overturned on appeal. I really do.
Oh, it's unconstitutional. Just right. the way it happened is unconstitutional.
Yeah, I don't know how. I don't know. You read all these, Trump guilty of 34 felonies and blah, blah, blah. And now all they're going to be saying is convicted felon, right. convicted mm-hmm. felon. The media is already laying the groundwork for that. It's just what it is. And
I find it funny that all this is, and we've said this before, like it's not convenient or coincidental that all this happens before the election. Mm-hmm. Like obviously the election's happening later this year, and so obviously they're expediting all this stuff now to make that happen. Before, like you were saying, what did you say that was happening in July?
Okay, it was his
conviction. I mean, sentencing.
His sentencing.
Yeah. Right. No, but you're saying there was like the
Republican National Convention.
Got it. Okay. So
I think it's 5 days later. So I think the Republican National Convention is July 15th.
Okay.
I think, because I kept saying I saw in the news that it was 4 days before
right.
the RNC.
Interesting.
So again, yeah, I mean, and I'm telling you, there's a lot of Democrats right now that are jumping in the streets, and Trump got his due, and on and on and on, and I'm just telling you, this was a wrong way. The way you defeat somebody, you've got to defeat ideas. Mm-hmm. And the only way you do that is through an election. Mm-hmm. To me, fair election.
You think they'll be screaming just as loud when the Biden crime family goes to jail when Trump is reelected? Oh, he got his due.
Tell you what,
he got his
I'll
due.
be honest with you, I worry about. And I knew some people who would probably not vote for Trump because they feel like that's all he would do. He'd spend the next 4 years basically, instead of governing the country, he would embark on a revenge tour. Which, as a human being, I can understand that.
Right.
You get attacked as much as you do, and human nature's like, you know what? I'm tit for tat. You know, whether that happens or not, I don't know. Whether he gets elected, who knows? I would say the conviction hurts him. Definitely, there are probably people out there that now won't vote for him because he's convicted. Right. Maybe there'll be people vote for him because he's convicted.
100%.
I think the Trump voter is going to be unswayed by this conviction. People that are going to vote for Trump are going to vote for Trump, period.
Right. I hate to do this, but the people that are smart enough to look at this are going to vote for Trump, and the people that are dumb enough to just buy everything the media says are going to be swayed by this.
Well, my question,
and look where that is.
So my question is then to y'all, what do you think, where does the country go from here? What does this mean for us?
I think people need to go back and listen to some of our past episodes on preparation and things, because either way, the shit could hit the fan this coming November.
There's a lot of people that say that we're fixing to enter some dark times, but yes. I've heard that a lot, and it's the same old screwed up stuff, and it's always been. It's sort of like, we're all, the world is doomed, but it keeps on going anyway, so to speak. Whether something is coming, who knows?
Well, a lot of the people say if Trump gets elected, I'm leaving the country. Dumbass, you won't even leave your parents' garage, let alone leave this country.
Yeah.
Let him win and let these people go. Let them go. Great. We've lost nothing. Maybe we can start getting our country back.
Well, the question is, though, okay. So that's what I'm saying. So what do you think by the actions of what just happened? They've for the first time, they've gone after a former president that is the front runner to run again and was leading in the polls.
Still leading in the polls. Still, even after he had a bump in the polls. I'll be honest with you. I think
actually this is going to give him. You saw that he raked in almost $53 million.
Yes, isn't that insane? Yes.
In campaign contributions.
Yeah.
Because of this.
I think people are waking up. I think a lot of times the conservatives are sitting back saying, I want to take care of my family. I want to go hunting. I want to go fishing. I want to go to the bar and play darts. I want to go bowling. And as long as this doesn't affect me directly, I don't really care what happens. But now I think it's so obvious as to what's happening. I think a lot of the conservatives are going, we better speak up, because if we don't speak up now, we're going to have more 4 years of this, and we're going to lose a lot more than if we don't speak up now.
Yeah, I mean,
I have a feeling that
where do we go from now?
I will continue to say the same thing that I've said probably a handful of years ago. Whenever it all got started, was people would ask me, "Do you think Trump's going to run again?" I was like, 100%. I think he's going to run again. Do I think he should? No, because of all the stuff that happened beforehand, it's just going to be more of the same. If he does get in office, it's going to be more media backlash, just hating on him for the next 4 years, and it's going to be a bunch of turmoil. And like you said, maybe he's going to have to push back and fight, against the people that were in Biden's administration while that was all going on. I was like, do I think it's probably a good option for him to run? Yes. Do I think it'd probably be the best all around? No. I just think it's going to be more messy. It's going to get more messy. It's going to get more heated and argued. I was like, the thing I had said was I would love to see a different conservative or a different Republican candidate come up and then with the advice of Trump or whatever, and then give us a new perspective and move away, divorce ourselves from all this chaos and divisiveness and all that other stuff, because I don't think it's going to be helpful at all. And now, I mean, I've
kind of felt like we've kind of crossed the Rubicon on this. I really do. I fear,
right,
because you've now opened up Pandora's box.
Yes.
Because now it's going to be tit for tat.
Oh, yeah.
You almost have to go through this now.
Right.
It's almost like once you open that Pandora's box,
right, once you go there and once you've established that you're willing to do this, now when the tables turn,
right,
and believe me, it does turn.
Yes.
Right.
Well, it's all a big pendulum. We've swung into the liberal sense now, and now the conservatives are ready to swing back.
But then, and let's hypothetically, and you know how I love talking about hypotheticals that get me in trouble, is that let's say hypothetically that, like you're saying, the pendulum swings and everyone, all the citizens, all go vote for Trump, because now I have a pretty strong feeling it's going to be Trump versus Biden. I think that's what it's going to be.
I have a little different thing. Keep going where you're going. I'm feeling something coming, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Let's say sporadically that for some reason, just like the previous election, that we get pushbacks on votes, or we get, fudged numbers, or whatever you want to call it, and then Biden gets reelected. Then if the majority actually is the Trump voters, then we're going to have this whole a whole country of the people against the government at that point, where it's more so than it already is. If now we all really decide on one person, and then it comes across the other way, and then this small group is making all the moves happen, then it's going to be us versus them, and which I don't think is good at all. Instead of it being pitting ourselves against each other, I feel like it's going to be a majority against the government, which is scary. And then, of course, in the opposite world is that if Trump gets in office, then you're going to have this other movers and shakers that make things happen against the people in a way, or against him, pushing him back in where he can't make anything effective happen, which I know is something that happened whenever he was president for those 4 years. There was so much pushback that he was dealing with, and so many other things he was dealing with.
I agree with you on that movers and shakers against us, but I think that's been happening for decades now.
Right, but I'm talking about now we're at a culmination of
I do believe that, unfortunately, the government has been weaponized against Trump and against basically people who I do believe that January 6th was a staged event.
Absolutely.
I do believe that was designed to make it seem like, here these crazy Trump people are trying to basically threaten democracy and all these things, and that's what I'm saying. If Trump does get elected, okay, he's got 4 years, and I know he's going to be dealing with a ton of pushback.
Right.
And the best thing he could do is to basically disrupt the money channels in Washington. And that's what people don't want to get disrupted.
Of course.
Well, it's like we said in past podcasts. It's what was the Ukraine war? Money laundering.
Trump was very critical of the intelligence agencies, and I'm telling you,
last person to do that wound up with a bullet in his head.
Exactly. And I'll be honest with you, I often wonder if this doesn't take him out, what is the next thing?
That's what I'm saying.
What is the next thing? Right. And I'm going to tell you, God forbid, if there's some attempt on his life,
right?
And if that would happen, what that would mean for the country.
My gosh.
Because I'm telling you that.
Civil War.
It's amazing that these movies that are coming out, like the movie "Leave the World Behind,"
great movie, and I did not want to watch that because of who funded that movie, but that wound up being a good movie.
There's other movie, Civil War, that came, which I think was
it's not very good, but the message is interesting.
Right. So that's what I'm saying is you're laying the groundwork for basically for people to, once they feel like they have no say in their government, zilch. That is fertilizer for these kind of things to potentially erupt.
Yes.
And I just, that's what I'm saying. Why they can't just, they just have let this go, let the election happen. Whatever happens, happens. And that's what goes back to my comment. Why is this guy they absolutely cannot have him in office? What is he doing? And that's what I'm saying.
He's going to mess up the money.
He is literally the military industrial complex. And unfortunately, I really believe deep down in my heart, I feel like that is the issue here.
We've said this many times on this podcast. And what is the first thing any detective in law enforcement says? Follow the money.
Mm-hmm.
Follow the money.
Exactly.
And here we go. Let's get into some conspiracy theories here, Tori. What if Donald Trump knows something, or every president ends up learning something about how things work, and he was one of the first ones to be vehemently against it? You know
I think that's happened. I don't think that's a conspiracy theory.
Well,
I think you can say a whole bunch of shit,
right.
like Obama said, I'm going to end all of these wars, and then he didn't end any and actually started 3. So once you get into that, it's like you said, once you get in it, you find out a whole bunch of more stuff than you actually did when you were running.
I do believe, like, for example, there was a lot of criticism with Mike Johnson with the Ukraine aid. And he was very much vehemently against this. And then all of a sudden he's become speaker, and now he's given the security briefings that are given as being basically the third person in line for the presidency. So I do believe there is information that's imparted on these people, and all of a sudden they realize, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden things change. Now, you could still, after receiving that information, say, I don't care.
Right.
I'm getting America out of
exactly.
this.
And that's what I was meaning. It's like the hypothetical I was.
What if Donald Trump did that?
It's like he gets into office and learns all this stuff, and of course people try to hush him in a way, or try to tell him you can't do certain things. This is our way of life. This is our comfortable way of life. You can't disturb that. And he was like, that's not going to happen. I'm saying potentially, like, what if that was something that happened where now all these people that are, drum him up as this bad person and really go against him because they're like, our comfortable, cozy way of life is in jeopardy because he is,
Well, I mean, there's defense contractors, there's people with stocks that own, have investments in these companies, and they're all about turning a profit. And if that's what I'm saying, if there's no money to be made when people are singing, around the campfire, singing Kumbaya. I mean, it's just, there isn't. It's a shame that that's just the reality of our world.
Right.
It's interesting too. I want to point out there that, I like what Ian's saying there. When do they actually start getting briefed? When does a presidential candidate start getting daily intel?
I think it's when they're in the runoff.
No, when they get the nomination.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That when they're
not the runoff. That's the nomination.
I'm talking about
that when he receives the nomination from the Republicans, he'll start getting briefed.
But I'm talking about like the behind closed doors kind of conversations.
But that's what this is. This is a security brief.
And I agree. I agree. I've always said that there's probably, they get there. That's why these presidential candidates, that's why they age.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I do believe that there is a sit down behind closed doors. It's okay. This is the reality.
Yeah.
This is what we're facing.
This is what you're really dealing with.
I used to make the joke.
Now, we can't come out and say that.
No, of course
not.
Because
that's going to freak everybody. It's going to freak everybody out.
If I ever become president,
right,
first thing I'm doing is going to Area 51. I want to know what the hell is in Area 51. But you know what? You may not be able to go. Right. Even as president, you may not be able to get in there.
Yeah. But I'm telling you, I think we may already be too late. I feel like this. I think we've set a bad precedent with this conviction and what they were doing. And here you got Alvin Bragg sitting there saying, well, I did my job, and the guy campaigned on bringing charges against Trump, and that to me is like, come on.
A little messy.
That's a little messy. That's not your job as the DA is to do that.
And then all this sketchy stuff that's come in from affairs and money and everything else and all this stuff against Trump.
Yeah,
talk about messy.
I'm predicting a bad outcome,
right,
from this. And look, even
now,
if
what do you consider bad outcome? Trump winning or Trump losing?
Well,
or Biden winning or Biden losing?
I'm even going really beyond Trump and beyond Biden.
That's what I'm saying. So which one is?
I'm saying the extent that our government is willing to go, and what I call the unelected third branch of government, or I should say the fourth branch of government, that really seems to be running the show. That is what I worry about. Is there is no control.
There is none.
There is none, and
because I don't think that it's. I agree with you on the fourth government, but I think it's BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard who own and manage over $64 trillion in assets.
Well, that's fine, and I agree.
How many countries touch that?
I'm not
None.
saying that they don't have their place in the equation.
They are the equation.
But my question is, I remember Ian brought that. What is their motivation?
Money and world power. That's their motivation.
Yeah, but how does that bring world power?
Okay, okay. I'll give it to you. Hold on.
How does that bring world power?
Who do you think they're funding?
What were you saying before about? You were saying something about what is their motivation?
Right. What is the motivation to basically screw everything up?
Yeah.
I'll give it to you.
What is the end game?
Right. So what if you tear down America, the thing that you're founded in and everything is hold upon, and you bring it all the way down to rock bottom and you make it worthless? Then what?
But here it is.
What are you hoping to get out of it?
The UN agenda, which is who these people are funding for 2030 mission goals: one world government, end of nations, one world army, one world police force, end of the family unit, number 5. This is off the UN webpage. I'm telling you, this is all of it. One world cashless currency.
You're telling me,
end of private property. World depopulation and fertility control. End of home and car ownership. Mandatory multiple vaccines yearly. Universal austerity income. Social media digital ID. Microchip for health, shopping, and travel. Implementation of Chinese social credit system. Government-raised children. All businesses run by the state. End of all non-essential air travel.
So in essence, the state becomes
it right there. These money
God,
people,
for all intents and purposes,
think about
state becomes God.
Yes. End of private farms and vegetable gardens. End of animal ownership. Ban of all natural medicine. AI courts and end individual rights. There's a target against America. Limit access to wild spaces. End of fossil fuels and modern conveniences. This is off of the UN website. Okay? So when you have people, UN, World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, which our governor just signed a bill saying these people have no authority. UN, WEO, World Health Organization, World Economic Forum, WEF, have no power in the state of Louisiana. Is that the third or fourth state to pass that law?
But the fact of the matter is, and that's fine.
That's great. That's better than fine.
I know. I agree. I'm 100% behind that. The reality side of me, Louisiana receives a ton of federal money.
Yes, every state does.
So the question is, if the pressure got put, that we're going to pull all federal money from your state, is the state willing to say, okay?
Are you old enough to remember the money that the federal government bribed us with to get rid of Napoleonic law?
Well, I mean, I knew there was money involved when they raised the drinking age and seatbelts, and a lot of that's used for that.
Louisiana was the only state under Napoleonic law. Everybody else is civil law.
Louisiana still uses Napoleonic law.
They uses terms of Napoleonic law. They are not a Napoleonic law state anymore.
When did that change?
20-something years ago, because the federal government.
I'd have to get some.
My memory's gone. I can't remember the exact date of it.
I don't remember. We've always been a Napoleonic, and that's with our civil law, not our criminal law.
Right.
Our civil law is still Napoleonic. Matter of fact, I just was reading something about that not long ago. But I'm saying, if all of a sudden the federal government says, well, we're gonna pull off federal funds since you're not adopting the World Health, these organizations' values. My question is, could this state or any state say no? And what would that mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of a firm believer. I will believe it when I actually see a state that basically thumbs their nose at the federal government and says, I'm not taking any of your money. I've yet to see one that's willing to do that.
Well,
is there one that's able to do that? I guess is the real question.
Well,
unless they come together and form their own nation.
To me, I've always felt that the only way that would happen is if basically the federal government couldn't print money anymore. And once you take the money equation from it, then basically the federal government people forget the states are what created the federal government.
That's right.
The federal government didn't create the states. And a lot of people got this notion that somehow the federal government's role in everyday society changed after the Civil War. It did. What the federal government's role is prior to 1861
was very small,
and what it was after 1861 are totally two different animals. It's just it wasn't what the original founders agreed that this would be, because the federal government's role was very minimal and it outlined its duties and responsibilities.
And then it changed even further after the two world wars.
Well, it was after probably World War I.
Yes.
Is when it really started changing, when you started, getting off, creating the income tax and kind of doing
income tax came from the Civil War. That was to pay for the Civil War, and it was supposed to be for a short term. But then World War I came about, and they said, okay, we're keeping it, and made it permanent.
Well, I think the income tax, though, came about, around 1908. That was not during the Civil War.
Well, it came because of the Civil War, to pay for the debt and things like that, to rebuild.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe so. But yeah, I don't. I just think we're in a different world now. So we have candidates like Trump, and we have people that support candidates like Trump, because basically it's a middle finger to what people perceive the government that has lost touch with the people that supposedly it's supposed to work for. And so we are.
And the crazy thing is that we're in a time now where there is a large portion of young people that are able to vote now that I don't know where they stand.
Oh, they stand for what I can get for free.
What I'm saying what I'm saying with that is I'm also with them in the fact of I don't know what's going on. There's so much happening here, with this whole conviction thing that's coming out of nowhere and all the other stuff that's happening, where it's I feel so disconnected from everything that's going on over there that it's this is my livelihood and I feel like I have no say in it. even if I vote, even if I don't vote. It's like all of this is happening.
Well, I mean,
whether I like it or not.
You know, at the federal level, I mean, generally you're dealing with very broad, overarching how the federal government's relationship with states and what it's going to. Because let's be honest, nothing fundamentally changes from one president to the other. I mean, it just doesn't. I mean, you're going to still get up, you're going to go to work. None of that changes. Now, where I think at those levels, what are you dealing with? You're dealing with maybe monetary policy, you're dealing with the Fed, who gets put on the Supreme Court, how things are ruled, a lot of social issues, abortion, gay rights. You mean you name the whole host of issues that are out there. You know, Trump. People basically say he's the one who overturned Roe v. Wade. You know, that was the big thing. You know, I'm a firm believer that it should have never been a federal thing.
That's right.
It should have always been a state-centered thing. The minute you take things away from the states and you're basically forcing different parts of the country's values on other parts, and it was never meant to be that way.
Well, did you know one of the Biden things he says if he gets elected again, that every American in the United States of America will now be required by law to buy a snowblower?
Well, I mean, you know, whatever.
An electric snowblower.
Yeah, well, I mean...
Okay, I'm sorry. Do you need a snowblower?
No.
Then why are we going to be required by law to have it?
Well, that's the problem when you try. That's what goes back to my fundamental question.
That's exactly the point.
It is the type of the role of the federal government in the day-to-day life of the everyday person, and I think that's ultimately what there's the difference between. Whereas Democrats believe that basically government should be involved in the everyday life of the human in the economy of an individual.
Yes.
In all aspects, economic, personal, whatever the case may be. Whereas I think generally on Republicans and conservatives are generally more of a hands-off.
Hey, leave me alone so I can take care of my family.
Right.
All I want to do is
want
do
to
my
empower
family.
the states, and the states are basically say, you just send me my money and be done with it. I shouldn't have any federal mandates coming down. And I think those are where the fundamental differences come in, good or bad. So, but no, I in my opinion, I think we've crossed a Rubicon with this. I think this has now established a precedent. It will be used now again for the other side.
Yes.
And I think we've further now alienated people. And I just think the more you alienate, the more our country gets frayed. The very foundational things that bind us as people get frayed. And I don't really see it going back.
I actually think they may have crossed the line in letting the American people know how far they're willing to go.
Oh yeah, they did.
And so I'm wondering. Okay, Ian's getting that glassed eye look like he's ready to go. So I have a question. All right, one question here as we're closing up. Predictions. Ian, who's going to win?
Oh, I don't know.
Just a fun prediction.
I don't know that answer fully because it's just like that hypothetical I gave earlier.
That's all.
I feel like deep down, it's just like we've talked about a handful of times. I think there's a lot of people that, regardless of this conviction, I think are still going to vote for Trump. I think that the people that I think really want a change are going to vote for Trump. But then again, I think that also there's people that may just abstain this go around more than ever.
Right. The question is what voters are going to stay home?
Right.
That's going to be the key.
Right. And so I think that that's the whole thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's another quote unquote difficulty with the election that is going to cause some sort of rift or padded votes or whatever's going to happen. So who's going to win? I really have no idea.
Take a guess. Come on. Prediction.
I have a feeling that Biden's going to get.
Okay.
That something's going to happen, something fishy's going to happen, and Biden's going to probably get put back in place, and that's going to put a big...
Biden.
That's the sad part.
I know. And I do.
But who knows?
I'm going to go out, and I'm going to say Trump, because I'm hopeful that enough of the conservatives are going to come out and vote that even the sketchy dead people and illegal aliens and everybody else that Biden gets to vote for him, I think there's going to be enough of them to come out.
I say that because I do believe that it's going to be shady shenanigans with the election.
Yeah. And I would like to say this to both of y'all and all of our listeners, that we know over the last 2 years, I've had a really rough June and July, and June and July is coming up.
Right.
And if something happens to me, and it's not good, and I pass, I need both of y'all to make sure that I don't vote for Biden in the coming election.
Right. We'll vote for you in your honor.
Make sure that my dead person does not vote for Biden.
Right.
Okay.
You got it.
I'll be coming back and haunting somebody.
Got it.
Well, and you say that, but then what was it? The Arizona Attorney General went to vote in the last election, and they told her, "You've already voted."
Yeah, there's something.
There's some sketchy shit coming on.
I know. And that's what I'm saying is I wouldn't be surprised if like the number of votes probably is going to be more towards Trump, but somehow they're going to swing it, and it's going to be different, kind of like last time. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it could be the opposite. Yeah. I'm down to be surprised. As
what
to
was
what's
it after the polls closed in the last when Trump lost? Over 30 million votes came after the polls closed,
right?
Yeah. In Biden's favor. Tell me how that happens.
Wasn't it Arizona or wasn't it one of those states over that way west that didn't give their votes until like after it was over?
Yeah, with? You had ballot drops at 3:00 in the morning. I mean, it was a joke.
Yeah. And then the Dominion, voting machines.
All votes need to be in by a certain time. Anything after that is just is thrown out. Plain and simple. Everything needs to be signature verified.
ID verified.
And signature and ID verified to know this person is who he says he is. So
no illegal aliens voting.
Right. Well, they're going to try to do that.
They're already trying it. You can actually go on there's some website for the voting, and it shows you how many dead people vote and how many illegal aliens have voted. I'll get that.
It further makes me just so sick, but that's what
I recently had a discussion with a pretty good friend of mine, and he said something that has kind of resonated with me this week. And he says that if it divides, it's not of God. And that's something that I think is really, when it comes to like bringing people together and showing love and showing appreciation, and especially when it comes to like a church setting, which we were kind of talking about in that discussion. He's like, anything that's going to be dividing people and kicking people out or making them feel not welcome, it's not of God. And I was like, it's a really interesting thing to think about, because that's, personally what I was thinking about when I was talking about in that conversation was, people, regardless of their background, being welcome, in God's house. So anyways, just thought that was interesting. For anybody out there, we have a YouTube channel I'm trying to push out now that it has all the podcasts on it, and it's all incorporated with YouTube music and all that stuff. You can type in at Retrospect Pod in the little search bar, and you find the channel there, which you can give likes and you can give comments there directly. It's really cool to see people kind of interact over there, or seeing those, seeing that whole platform now kind of take off. But just as before, we're on all the major podcasting platforms as well, and you can reach out to us on our Facebook at Retrospect Pod as well, or our email address, getitfinitetogether@gmail.com.
And our website.
And our website as well. But until next week, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
You're the best. Peace.